It's wild that there have been 4 Spider-Man on the big screen by now. And once 3 of them were all there at the same time.
I love you guys.
Growing up, I only had 1. And I'm not even talking about Frederick Von Trapp from The Sound of Music.
How come you're the only one who's able to get pictures of him? Simple. I believe.
I'm talking about Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, Mr. Tobey Maguire himself. I remember seeing him on the big screen for the first time and being mind blown. I also remember my parents buying us the DVD. This was one of the first DVDs we owned, and as if I hadn't aged myself enough, I lived through the VHS to DVD transition, so having a DVD was actually a pretty big deal. Also, back in those days, movies were accompanied by their video games. So today we're going to take a look back at those Tobey games and see if they were truly amazing. Let's look back at the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy games. Released 2 weeks before the movie in 2002, Spider-Man loosely follows the same story beats of the movie with a few detours. Because it was developed along with the movie, devs didn't get to see the whole film, and it shows. It kind of feels like they were doing their own thing while still trying to hit the bullet points. Peter gets his spider abilities, and as he's getting the hang of things, Uncle Ben gets shot. And with this, he starts his new life, fighting crime and helping out the people of New York City. Meanwhile, Oscorp CEO Norman Osborn is working on a super soldier serum, and Spidey catches their eye, so they want to capture him. After failing to do so, Norman gets fired from Oscorp and decides to test the serum on himself, creating the Green Goblin. Goblin attacks the board at the yearly festival where MJ is just caught in the fire, which leads to the first encounter versus the Goblin. So it features a similar story and has you doing the important parts of the movie, like chasing Uncle Ben's killer, saving MJ a bunch of times, and fighting the Green Goblin at the end, but this time on a bridge, which is kinda right, but not really. They also added a ton of more villains, Shocker, Scorpion, and Vulture, featured in their comic faithful attires, which I loved. Yeah, I made it sound like it was way more. It's only 3, but they feel like way more. They're very important because they cover more than half of the game. I do remember having this game back in the day, but for some reason we didn't own a memory card, so I just kept playing the few levels over and over again, really not getting that far. And now, as a grown-ass man, I must say, this shit's still hard, man. Let's start from the beginning, the tutorial. You have this jerk narrating it, and he's just roasting you the whole time. At first, he kind of sounded like Adam Carolla to me, and I was kind of giving him an attitude.
Good to see that you can follow basic instructions.
Who the fuck are you, man? I'm Spider-Man, leave me alone. But once I found out it was Bruce Campbell, number 1, I was super disappointed in myself that he didn't cross my mind, and 2, I immediately loved him. So Bruce tells us about the Spidey compass that's always pointing towards where the action is. You also have a height meter, which I feel newer games should develop a new form of this, because it's really helpful. Don't you hate when you're just looking at a map and you can't tell if what you're looking for is above or below you because it's not where it says it is? So I appreciate this little meter. You can punch, kick, and whoop some ass. You collect these golden spiders that give you more combos, and there's a whole combo list. You have a web meter. You can get some gloves and deal some more damage. You can make a web cocoon and blast at them, so there's a healthy variety of attacks here. It has pretty basic combat that versus the normies works okay, but when it comes to the bosses, it doesn't feel satisfying at all because they don't really animate in response to the ass whooping. They just kind of stand there, take it, and then turn the tables on you. Something that's a struggle is the camera because it's ass and you're constantly fighting against it. You can only move it side to side. You can't really go up and down, so that's not really good. But the most annoying part of the whole game is that he will climb up the wall if he gets too close to it. He did this so many times when I wasn't meaning to. So if you turn too sharp on a corner and touch the wall, this fool doesn't hesitate to stick to it and try to climb up it. And this is absolutely the worst while swinging, which I'll get into in a minute. So the best strategy in combat is to kind of run away and shoot webs from a distance, because if you try to brawl with everybody, you're eventually going to get mauled. It took me a few levels to understand this. I always want to just run up and throw hands, but you get overwhelmed pretty easily, so finding things to actually throw at them to thin out the herd versus crowds really helps. The lock-on system does a fine enough job when it does eventually want to work, and Spidey can take damage pretty well, but later on they bring in guns and lasers that really drain the health bar. There's no dodge. That is desperately missing, along with a double jump. I found myself pressing the jump button a few extra times in hopes that it would just magically appear. But you can zip up walls and do the Spidey yo-yo. You can aim to where you want to zip as well. This actually turned out to be more helpful than I thought. I thought it was just going to be a feature I wouldn't use at all, but they designed it few missions with this in mind. These levels are still a huge pain in the ass and can still induce rage quitting. One of the main things you must get right in a Spider-Man game is the swinging. And I'll say that this does a subpar job. Does it look like the web is just sticking onto the clouds? Sure, but I don't actually think this is the worst web swinging mechanic ever. You press the button to start swinging and then he just does it automatically, and by holding down the trigger he goes faster, but you lose more control. You push up on the stick to go higher, you push down to go lower, and steering is just fine. But again, the worst part of this comes in the chase sequences, not only because some of the levels are really hard and kinda unforgiving, and especially bullshit because they expect precision moves to be made with these goofy ass controls, but it's the worst part because of what I said earlier. You can't run into anything because homeboy sticks to everything like those hand toys from the 80s. It's annoying because it's like, I don't want to do that, game, and you should know I don't want to do that because you're telling me to chase this fool. Why would I want to stick up to the building? Some of these chase levels were pretty infuriating. This goblin one felt like the only way to beat it is to kind of cheat and not follow right behind him, because even with me not making any mistakes and going right behind him, he still found a way to fly away, and I failed. So the only way to win is to cut him off, and the only way to do that is to do it so many times that you know his route. It totally doesn't feel right, but that was the only way for me to be able to beat the level. And the later levels get worse. Not only do they add a stupid ass timer, but then they have these bots chasing you and these lasers that can hit you. It's just too much. It felt like overkill. Plus, with the limitations that the game already has, it makes it even harder than it should be. And there's no checkpoints either, so you die, you have to redo the whole mission. I did like how New York City looks and feels though. It feels very New York. Well, of what I've seen. I've never actually been. But as you swing around, I like the reflection off the buildings, and I think for the time, the graphics aren't too bad. The game is linear with straightforward levels, so there's not much exploring you can do. You can beat it within a few hours, well, maybe on easy on your first go. But like I said, there's no checkpoints for the levels. It's all or nothing. So in some of the longer ones, it's nerve-wracking not to lose because you don't want to do the whole thing all over again. I will say that they also attempted to do some stealth levels. Spidey can go invisible while he's in the shadows. And these levels consisted of finding computers for codes or sneaking around the lab. And if you're caught, guards pop out and sound the alarm. And also these bots show up and start shooting. But if you found a corner, like I said, to go invisible, they'll eventually go away. You can crawl in vents and hide, but actual stealth stuff is really missing, like taking out an unsuspecting guard, tying him up to the ceiling, or at least taking him out quietly. Stuff like that is really missing. You have your common thugs, which they then introduce guns like I mentioned. Then the spider bots can throw at you, and then you team up with Scorpion for a second as well. The Shocker level is hard, but it offers something different, and sometimes there's civilians around that you need to help out. So an attempt at variety was made. The ultimate problem is that it's just not interesting enough most of the time. The boss fights are actually interesting. There's not a whole lot of them, but they provide some sort of fun. I played the PS2 version, so unfortunately I did miss out on the 2 exclusive Kraven the Hunter levels from the Xbox. This was the first time Spider-Man was going to appear on the Xbox, so maybe they were trying to do something special for Microsoft. But I did have Shocker, so that was cool. I really like this look and his voice acting as well.
That freak's made a mess of things. I got a score to settle now.
But the best voice acting by far was Willem Dafoe as Goblin. You can really hear his effort.
Spider-Man?
MJ and Harry aren't played by their actors. MJ kind of sounds like Louise from Bob's Burgers.
Thanks again. Go get him, Tiger. Why don't you try speaking in words instead of your damn dirty lies?
But what I found to be even weirder is that she has a jukebox in her apartment. Like, who has a whole ass jukebox in her place? At the end of the level, you get scored, and once you complete the entire game, you unlock pretty cool skins for Spidey, and you're even able to play as MJ, Matrix Spidey, and others. And you also unlock Pinhead Bowling. Like I said before, the game was being made alongside with the movie, so most lines are different. Like, one of my personal favorite lines of Goblins was changed instead of "Don't tell Harry." Doesn't quite hit the same.
Tell Harry. I'm sorry.
And instead of choosing to be Spider-Man over MJ, he instead stands over Goblin and makes out with her. And then she's like,
"There's something I have to tell you.
I know, Tiger. You don't have to say.
So again, it's very much loosely based on the movie. These aren't terrible decisions that make the game absolutely horrible. I just took it like an alternative version of the movie. Then at the end, Toby tells you to go touch grass.
Looks like you're done now. Go outside and play."
And it ends. I will say that I think that there's just more nostalgia feelings attached to this game than anything else. That's why it's really so beloved, because it's not a great game by any means. It has fun moments, it's way harder than it's supposed to be, but for the most part it's still playable today. It sold 2.1 million copies in the US and even got a platinum greatest hits version. For a game that only took 18 months to make, I'd say that's a pretty good job. The next game took 2 years to develop, and it completely shows. There were 6 different versions of Spider-Man 2 released between 2004 and 2005, spanning across basically all the platforms of the time. The PC version was a 3D game, Nokia N-Gage was a mix of 2D platforming and 3D time trials, Game Boy Advance was a 2D platformer, PSP was a linear 3D game, and the console version was an open-world 3D campaign. All the versions follow the movie pretty closely, but add some side stories with villains that really aren't in the movie. But the gist is that Peter's trying to juggle all his responsibilities of a social life, school, job, and being Spider-Man, while his idol, Otto Octavius, tries to create self-sustainable energy. In doing so, an accident occurs, frying his arms to him and turning him into the diabolical Dr. Octopus. His wife perishes in the accident and he blames Spider-Man for it. The version I played was the console version, so the 3D open world campaign. I had never really played it before, but I had high expectations because everything I'd ever heard about this game was completely positive. Here you're also greeted by Bruce.
Well, sequel time already, huh? Welcome back, I guess. I'm sure you miss me more than I missed you.
He gives you the scoop and also tells you that littered throughout the entire city there are hint markers you can collect for points. There are over 200 hint markers scattered on the map, along with a ton of challenges to do, races, reach markers before time runs out, and you can go for the massive score on each one of these activities. There are also 150 skyscraper tokens to collect as well, so right off the bat there's just way more to do even after the story concludes in this game. So with so much on the map, I find it kind of odd that you can't really set a marker. Mission markers appear on the map, but you can't set one yourself. The open world aspect fits Spidey way better. Just make New Yorkers play around and let them loose. You can't go too long before an event occurs and you must help a civilian. It could be taking them to the hospital, stop a mugging, chase car thieves down, stop bank robberies. Sometimes they even trick you into an ambush or saving a guy that's dangling from the building. But the toughest challenge of them all by far is getting these damn balloons. A quick fun fact about this kid, he actually appears in the Ultimate Spider-Man game, a game I've played for the channel that you can check out after watching this one. He's actually the first person you eat when you turn into Venom. This was done as a nod to players who found the boy to be super annoying in Spider-Man 2. So the environment and the people make the city feel alive. They shout good stuff and bad stuff at Spidey as he swings by.
I'm walking here.
You get awarded points for completing these activities, and if you fail, they take them away, and they don't even let you retry it. Instead, something else will pop up, kinda upping the stakes and making it feel a bit more immersive and important, like you actually let that person down, or drown. The game is split into chapters, and the game forces you to earn a set number of points to move on. Once you earn them, the next chapter comes in, freezing Spidey in any position, and I do mean any. You use these points to go buy upgrades in an actual store. Can you imagine Spidey walking into a store and asking if you could buy speed? Anyway, you buy faster swing speeds, fighting combos, and moves to do, as well as acrobatic air tricks. Before Marvel's Spider-Man, a lot of people bringing up Spider-Man 2 swing as the best one ever. And I'll say, physics-wise, I agree. Its physics works as the web should work. It really matters where the web sticks to, how far you are from it, and because of that, not every swing is the same, making it feel more realistic because it's actually sticking to something. And because there's a lot to the physics, it could take a little bit of practice to get the hang of it. And once you get it, it's pretty good even by today's standards. There are 2 swinging modes, manual where you control where to swing from and have more control, or the easy one button swing where it just attaches to the closest point to you. Even though you upgrade the speed, there's a good sense of speed from the jump. I did wish that there was a way to move up the web sometimes. Sometimes you send the web way too far so you're still on the ground. To help you with this, you have Spidey's jump. So if you hold down the jump button, he does this giant super jump. He goes about 30 meters in the air, which can also do while swinging and climbing. Oh my god, I loved it so much that they took away the stupid stickiness. Now you have to hold down a button if you want to grab onto the walls or begin to climb. Otherwise, he bounces off the buildings and you can even run alongside them and up them. This change alone bettered my experience tenfold from the previous game. It feels like you have way more control off of each individual swing. Even when you mess up, there's things you could do to get back on track. You can slingshot super far. That was really cool. A good move to thread the needle sometimes is to do the web yank, which helps on chase sequences to pick up much more speed. The chases are way more forgiving as well. There's no fast travel, so you'll be swinging around the entire map. I'm actually kind of glad that there's no fast travel, because you will get to see most of the map, especially if you decide to 100% it. I think it's a pretty good sized map. It's not too big where it feels overwhelming, and it's not too small. So once you hit the ground, Spidey can sprint, and by sprinting and punching, you can launch enemies in the air with an uppercut, shoot bigger web balls at them, yank them towards you, throw them around. There are plenty of moves for attacks. He also uses the Spidey sense to dodge, which then you can counterattack, which is very satisfying. It very much feels like early Arkham system, and it works that well. The common thug might have a melee weapon or a gun, and you can easily just arm them or wrap them in the web. I find it interesting that they gave Spidey a ragdoll mechanic when he gets hit with something pretty big, usually by a boss. It was funny the first time it happened because it caught me off guard, but in the final battle it was not so funny because it was super cheating, because there was actually nothing I could do.
Oh no! This is fitting vengeance for my poor roses.
Please don't die. Peter! Look out!
This experiment will prove my genius for all.
Other than Otto, there were again a bunch of Spidey villains. You fight Shocker again. There's a whole subplot with Mysterio where we see how he comes to be. Rhino appears for a mission that was really cool, and their fights were interesting. They put you in specific scenarios that made sense for those characters, so nothing really feels forced. While developing the second movie, Sam Raimi had the idea of having Harry put out a bounty out on Spidey's head, prompting other Spidey villains to come out and chase him for it. Some of those villains were planned to be Lizard and Black Cat. He ultimately felt like it was too much, so he removed them both. Now, while the Lizard doesn't appear, the Black Cat sure does, and is a pretty pivotal part of the story. Other than her just flirting with Spidey all the time, she actually helps him find the balance he's actually looking for, something I felt was not done at all in the movie. So for a bunch of missions, you are chasing her around New York City as she helps you take down bad guys and even help you with Shocker. Their dynamic is interesting and actually made sense. Voice acting is pretty good. Kirsten Dunst plays MJ this time and does a very good job. I felt Toby did a better job this time around. He's way more quippy and doesn't just call everybody ugly like some sort of mean girl. Harry was not great.
Still palling around with that murdering bug?
Harry, I know you think Spider-Man killed your dad.
He did kill my dad. Someday I'll get him for it too.
Who was great was the villain once again, with Alfred Molina. He's menacing when he has to be and soft when he's not. I really enjoyed his performance.
Pass a message along for me. If you ever want to see this girl alive again, tell your photogenic arachnid friend that he will meet me alone.
They also did a great job with the level design. You can go into the Bugle and get assignments. You will fight Mysterio in a stadium. You will find him in his apartment. You will fight him in a clown-filled funhouse. You will track Shocker down to a base. They just did a lot to switch up the environments, and the character work in this game did a very good job as well in fleshing out characters, from background guys like Robbie from the Bugle to Doc Ock's main motivation by having his Rosie be the real reason why he continues to do everything. But by making her his clear-cut motivation as to why he's doing what he's doing, really makes him even a more compelling character than he is in the movie. I see why people love Spider-Man 2. The open world aspect really makes sense for Spider-Man games, and allows for a ton more content to be added. The story can be completed in less than 6 hours, but it can take you twice as long to 100% the game. But other than unlocking a few more upgrades, you don't really get much else as a reward for 100%ing the game other than a thank you. Spider-Man 2 is one of the best movie tie-in games. You see it on most top 10 lists. It's fun, it's greatly improved from the first game, and it's easily still playable today. Other than the final fight, it's really not that hard. The swim mechanic is one of the best. It was even considered the best Spider-Man game period at the time. So now we're going to move on from the best game and movie in the series to easily the one that is regarded as the worst. Spider-Man 3 released in 2007, the same day as the movie, for all major consoles and handhelds at the time. They all follow the movie with a few differences, including a Morp in Time mission that is only playable on the PlayStation 2, Wii, PSP, and Nintendo DS. I played the PS3 version of the game, which is the same as the 360 and the PC version, therefore I missed out on this Morbius mission. This game follows the movie the closest out of the three, and I don't know if that is necessarily a good thing. But we're going to start with the tutorial mission. In a burning building where Bruce Campbell is once again giving us the rundown on how to play, which by the end of it leads to the infamous quick time event lady.
I'm going to die.
Yeah, maybe I should have let this lady burn with her scary ass.
Fasten your seatbelt. It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
There's also a combo system like in the other two, and to its credit, the combos are way better in this game than in the rest. They just feel more efficient. You can also slow down time, and while you do, you dodge incoming attacks and can counterattack. Sometimes you run out of juice in the middle of whatever you're trying to dodge, and that can be super annoying. And this really sucks in a crowd. If you dodge one and counterattack it, the others around you can still hit you and disrupt the attack. Protecting these characters in this last lizard level feels absolutely impossible. This might have been the toughest level for no absolute reason other than there's just a bunch of lizards around you. Nothing about the combat feels satisfying. Nothing about the game feels very particularly satisfying. I wasn't much of a fan of this slow motion. I much rather prefer the Arkham-like system where you press a button to dodge. But if the quick time events are any indication on the timing of this game, then I think this was the better move overall for this game. I'll get into the QTEs in a minute because, oh boy. So the blue meter in the corner is how long you can hold down to slow down time for. It does regenerate in itself, so at least that's not much of a pain in the ass. The red one is your health, and this circle is for your special. There are 4 special attacks that offer a better form of attack, especially for these crowds. Are they super creative? No. Did I mainly just stick to 2 of them? Yeah. But did they get the job done well enough? Kinda. It's just that the combat is just really basic. There are no items to pick up like before. You can throw things with their web, but it just doesn't feel super effective. Everything about this game just feels off. Even when you die, it takes a long second for the game to like register that you're dead or something. It's just kind of weird. The camera feels super jerky. You have more control over it than in the second game, but it's still not great. This game is also an open world. There's a ton of dots on the map, but you can separate them by the main missions, the activities, and the crime fighting. The missions are the ones that progress the story, obviously. The main story beats are a hit. You get Harry versus Spidey in their first very awkward fight in the air. It just simply sucks. It feels weird. It looks weird. It doesn't feel right, and it's missing the web boing from the movie. And yeah, the symbiote attaches to Spidey, and then Flint Marko becomes Sandman. You fight him a couple times like he does in the movie. You can do the face grind like he does in the movie, which is kind of cool. Spidey takes off the symbiote, it falls on Eddie Brock, he becomes Venom. Harry and Spidey fight Sandman and Venom just like in the movie. So you do play the major bits from the movie. The thing is, it takes a while to get to the movie bits, and I'm not complaining. It's just an odd feeling to be more than halfway through the game and not seeing Sandman or the symbiote yet. When you do get the Venom suit, he starts to deal more damage and he fights a little bit more aggressively, and Peter himself also starts acting like a prick in cutscenes.
Is everything all right?
I figured you were talking enough for both of us.
Peter, what's gotten into you lately?
Nothing that's stopping your gums from flapping wouldn't solve.
Other than the quick time events, the biggest crime of the game is not having the symbiote sound effect. So other than the main movie missions, which actually aren't that many out of the 42 you must do, there are way more missions involving Spidey villains and other people in Peter's life, like getting photo assignments from the Bugle, helping out the detective on a case, taking pictures of shady cops, and I guess spending some quality time with MJ. No, not like that. By being her personal form of transportation.
Thanks for coming. You're so much faster than a cab.
What did you just say? You're just dating me so I can take your cheap ass to work? And you do this in the most useless missions in the game. You must swing with MJ on your back and take her where she needs to go while obeying her commands like some sort of horse. all to collect enough hearts for your Uber rating, I guess. I don't know, man. These were very stupid because they led to nothing. They're totally unnecessary and very, 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 very stupid. At least some of the villain stories are more interesting than the movie missions themselves, especially a Scorpion mission, as he's an experiment who occasionally gets his mind controlled, so Spidey tries to help him escape, which leads to an encounter with Rhino. And I really just found that, oh wait, MJ needs another ride.
Swing up real high!
Okay, where was I? Oh yeah. So the Scorpion story I really liked the most because I found it to be the most compelling. Sure, you deal with Dr. Connors and the Lizard, and there Kraven gets involved, and it's always very fun and cool to see him, but that just felt very superficial. The Scorpion one is an actual story, has feeling and reason to it. He loves this doctor lady, and that's why he's agreeing to do all the experiments. So that story really drew me in. The gameplay and the missions themselves aren't necessarily the most creative, but at least do feel kind of personal to the villains we're dealing with. They're different from each other. You disarm bombs, you defend canisters, you save people, you catch them from the sky, and you have a healthy amount of boss fights which get dragged horribly by the QTE, which I'm not yet ready to talk about. There's also attempts at stealth, but not very good ones, and once you complete the missions, you get awarded combos or attributes like health and speed, etc. So on top of all that, there are 3 whole gangs you must take down. These are the ones responsible for the crime all throughout New York. You got the Apocalypses, you got these goth e-girl ladies, you got the Dragon Tails, who by the end are all being controlled by Wilson Fisk. And you address these in their own specific missions and by doing some of the crime fighting on the street. You can just randomly engage in a chase or in a fight similar to like in the second game, or there's really random wild goose chase where you're chasing somebody with the cops swinging around to try to move the Spidey icon as he senses where the thugs are at. I don't know, honestly just feels so lazy. And all of them are like stupid and long to do, so I just ended up ignoring them. I wasn't a huge fan of the activities either. These, as you can imagine, are your races, your combat time events, your very typical Spidey activities. But by far, the worst of them all is the skydive. Now, we could very much have a Cuphead reviewer situation here, because I simply did not understand the control. They're infuriatingly awful. You're supposed to fall into these rings and land in a certain spot for points. So if you move up on the joystick, the pitch goes faster. So you lose control and can't really steer where to go. It's impossibly sensitive and it doesn't make any sense to me. All the YouTubes I saw, they were doing it on the PC. So I don't know if it's broken on consoles or I'm just a dumb Either way, I hated it so much. Let me know your console experience from the skydives. I just really didn't understand it. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but it felt like I was doing something wrong. The map is a total... Hold on. MJ gotta go to work.
I want to go even higher!
The map is a decent size, but feels smaller. Maybe because everything looks the same. It's just lifeless. Graphics kind of feel like they're not done rendering and everything has the same shade over it. And the city itself feels dull and soulless. There's no one hollering at you when you go by. All the buildings look the same. It's just dull and undetailed. The background is PS1 level gross. Like, what the hell is even that? It looks like audience from an N64 wrestling game. Not to forget how things pop in and out worse than a neighbor in a 90s sitcom. Plus, it runs like shit if there's too much stuff going on the screen. I just don't understand why there's more detail in Spider-Man 2 for the PS2 than there is in this game. There's the reflection off the building. The city feels alive. There's a bunch of movement. And here, it just feels super flat. At least the character models look okay, especially in the cutscenes. And the voiceover is actually quite decent.
That's the third call I got about giant lizards running amok in Gramercy Park. Giant lizards!
But Spidey doesn't talk outside of the missions. There's no like, oh, I wonder how Dr. Connors is doing. Or interactions with the NPCs. There's no dialogue in between the missions like in the free roaming. There's no urgency until you start the mission. It's very unsettling for him to just be quiet. Even the music doesn't fit all the time. They try to make music that fits the scenario of what you're doing rather than the score of the movie. Like in the detective missions, for example, they tried to go for this like noir type background music, but instead it sounds like Skinamax music. Don't ask me how I know. The swinging is also nerfed, is not as satisfying as 2. It's much more automatic and you lose a little bit more of the 100% control. And how you gain height depends on when you use the boost and the swing. So you're supposed to use it at the end of the swing to go higher. So gaining height can be annoying sometimes because it takes a second. And the double jump in the air doesn't give you as much height as you would want it to. I mean, you do have enough control that it makes it playable, but I wouldn't call it necessarily super fun to zip around. All right, now let me finally get into these damn quick time events. You know what? Hold on. Let me give this stupida one last try so she don't interrupt me.
Swing really close to the ground.
The quick time events in this game are the epitome of broken bullshit. They're so wild and beyond annoying. They're too fast, and 85% of the time you feel like you actually did the right thing. But the game decides, nah, you fail. I know when I fail because there's a giant X over the button. So if there's no X, you're trying to tell me I was too slow? Can someone explain to me how I failed this one? Like, huh? I pressed the button. The NPCs are so lifeless and scary. I don't even want to save them anyway. Like, what the hell is this guy's deal? If that's Spider-Man? Like, dude, quit sniffing Sharpies, my guy. And in the last mission, it's just so painful, man.
Oh no, I'm going to be late.
Not now. Wait. The last mission is super bullshit because of how quick it expects you to react. It's like you almost need to know the timing and the button of the input by heart to do it. And that's literally what I did because I died so many times. I got to the point where I memorized the buttons I had to press, and that was the only way to beat it. I feel like if you hand the controller for a first timer, it's impossible. They can't do it. Not only are the quick time events dumb, they also try to teach you something brand new at the very end of the game by forcing you to use Harry to fly around and hit the Santa with the bombs. Good fun idea, horrible execution. It's a very rushed tutorial, and they're acting as if we're not in the most important battle of the game. Like, what are we doing? So yeah, that quick time event is absolute ass as well. So if you manage to beat it, you end up unlocking new Goblin to use to fly around in the city. You also unlock some Harry specific races, but these suck as well, because he controls like a bucking bronco whose balls are being pinched. It's absolutely awful. I would have much rather he just died like he did in the movie. I felt like I had the venom inside me for that part.
I'm going to be late. Go really fast.
This game feels super rushed and unfinished. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense that feel like the devs were like, meh, leave it in, no one's gonna notice. Which leads to stuff that is so bad that it gets to be kinda good. Like the intro lady. Like this super random scorpion scream.
You're a freak.
Like this cutscene. The way he just jumps in like he's gonna save this lady, he says a catchphrase and then turns around to disable a bomb, ignoring the hostage. This super random scorpion minigame, where you use him for a bit, but I still don't understand what this was supposed to be. Was this supposed to be like old footage, a live feed, a show that they put out? I have no idea. I had to grasp at these moments to find some sort of joy in this game. Spider-Man 3 shares many similarities with the movie, and not just story-wise, just the fact that it absolutely sucks. It has cool villain cameos, but mission design is just lazy. The whole game is kind of lazy. They clearly regressed far beyond even the very first game. They did so well with the second game, you would expect them to build upon that. Instead, they went backwards, and they went so far back, the first game is better than this one, including the graphics. The only thing I liked from the game was the voice acting. You can tell that the actors actually tried. But the rage-inducing QuickTime events sends this game into really bad territory. A fourth movie was planned, but as production went along, Sony kept forcing input, which led to Raimi stepping away from the project and Sony moving forward with the Andrew Garfield reboot. The fourth game was being developed exclusively for the Wii. Radical entertainment artist Wayne Dalton showed screenshots for the game and revealed that it got cancelled. Assets for the game were actually reworked into Prototype 2. So who knows what could have been of the fourth game and film. So those are my thoughts on the Tobey Maguire trilogy movie. Make sure to let me know yours down in the comments. Your memories of playing them, Easter eggs, fun facts, anything at all. Let me know down in the comments. I love reading your guys' experiences. And if you made it this far, it means that you actually enjoyed this video, so let me know by dropping a like. And if you really enjoyed it, go ahead and subscribe for more content. Thank you guys for watching. Remember to always and forever, you do.